Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I just absolutely love the way these characters have grown over the couple of years. I've grown up with these characters ever since the first movie came out in 2014. And now the third and final chapter, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, just released. It is directed once again by James Gunn, directed and written. It stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldaña, Dave Bautista, along with a not much bigger cast of characters that I really enjoyed and always shine in these movies. So I'm really excited to talk about it today because I gotta admit that this is one of my favorite movies in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is definitely my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I never expected to like it this much, even though the last two Guardians movie were great. But there was a lot of like hype surrounding the movie, like a lot of speculation, spoilers. I didn't really watch many of the previews because I don't really do that anymore. But people had the idea that this was gonna be a kind of depressing movie. So, but I gotta say that it had a little bit of that. But I gotta say that this one is still full of the charm that makes these movies so great. The third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I have to admit that it was just so fun to go and watch. And today I'm excited to talk about it. And I also have to warn that this is gonna be a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to know what happens, I'm advising right now to turn it off because I think it's kind of hard to talk about anything surrounding this movie without talking about spoilers because the very plot of the movie is a spoiler in itself. So yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it, starting with the plot, and then I'll explain what I liked about the movie. Okay, so from now on, spoilers, and you were warned. So basically, the movie follows the last Guardians chapter, which was the holiday special. And I gotta say, I liked that one, but it just felt too short and just like too full of jokes to really appreciate it. But this one actually takes a lot of the serious stuff from the Guardians. It really is an exploration of some of the characters, especially Rocket. So this movie centers around Rocket and also around a little bit of Star-Lord and a bit. Like it kind of continues that story with Gamora. But the movie starts off with, Rocket basically getting demolished by Adam Warlock, which is kind of you kind of get the impression that he was an important character, but he was kind of like more of as a side character in the movie. But he basically gets like gravely injured, and the Guardians have to find a way to basically revive him because he's in a very critical condition. And the entire movie had like the feeling that Rocket was gonna die throughout the entire movie because he's basically like in hospital bound throughout the entire movie. So you kind of get that impression, and that's what the trailer showed. So something I gotta talk about before continuing with the movie is that the marketing for this movie just made it look like it was going to be the most depressing send-off for the Guardians of the Galaxy movies because like everybody was speculating like, oh, everybody's going to die, Drax is going to have like the worst death ever, Rocket is definitely going to die in this one. Like people were already saying like the entire movie was just going to be like this depressing journey of Rocket's death, kind of like Passion of the Christ or something. And I was like, dude, I mean, it's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, obviously it's going to have fun moments, but the trailers did seem it was going to be that way. Like it's showing like Star-Lord crying over a hospital bed, a lot of Rocket's back, like a lot of those posters and stuff focused on Rocket, so everybody was like, yeah, this is going to be Rocket's death, definitely. But I gotta say, like, no, Rocket doesn't die. He actually recovers towards the end of the movie. It's basically, yeah, so the plot is just kind of like more fun adventures for the Guardians to save their best friend, which is, Rocket Raccoon. So they go and explore these different locations that are all owned by the main villain of the story, which is called the High Evolutionary. And I gotta say, it is a very excellent villain. It is one of the best villains we had in a while in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think the best villain since Thanos. I actually think he was way more imponent than Kang, that they try to make him like one of the main bad guys of the MCU in the last movie, the Ant-Man and the Wasp. But I gotta say, like, he was much more imponent, much more powerful, and much more evil. This is one of those characters that is just like evil for the sake of evil, and that it works really well because I feel like the movie is like the way he is written is very good. I think the actor Chukwudi Iwuji did a really good job as the character, so I really appreciated him. So the plot itself is kind of like more like this kind of like video game side quest thing. Like you go to this location to have a thing to save Rocket, and then they don't have it, so you have to go to this next location for the other thing that is necessary to save Rocket. So they go visit these different locations, and I gotta say they're really creative. So that's something I want to appreciate about the movie, is that the different locations are really creative in the classic James Gunn kind of way. So basically they visit this planet that is just like kind of like an organic being, like everything is made of like skin and like hair and stuff, and it's just really fun. And then there's another one that's kind of like this planet called Counter Earth, where it's just kind of like an exact replica of Earth, but everybody's like an animal, and that's a creation of the High Evolutionary. So it's like basically this just like huge villain, this huge Marvel character that we haven't seen until this moment, but actually he's been like kind of behind the scenes in a lot of the Guardian stuff, especially for example like the Golden People. I don't remember the names from the last movie, but he basically creates them. He creates basically indirectly Adam Warlock in this like never-ending search for the perfect society, and that is a really interesting story. I think it worked in a lot of ways, but I feel like the main focus of these movies are the characters and their growth, and that was handled really, really well. So some of the main things in the movie are basically, yeah, that adventure with the Guardians, just having this like final adventure to save their friend, and also focuses a lot on Rocket's backstory, which is something that I've been really interested in the couple last Guardians movies. Like, where did this like raccoon come from? Why is he like human-like? Why is he so smart? And this movie answers all those questions. I think it was a very satisfying thing, and it's also very sad in a lot of ways. Like, there's these other characters that Rocket interacts with in his youth. And as he grows up, he realizes that the High Evolutionary is evil, and there's some really, really sad scenes that I won't kind of spoil now because I don't see the point, but when you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I feel like those scenes were really emotional, and the way, like, there's a scene where Rocket is about to die, also that really hit me. And I actually thought he was actually going to die in that scene. Like, I try not to spoil anything for myself, but that scene really cemented, like, made this movie have stakes, which is something, like, I feel like none of the other Marvel movies I had in a while is some actual real stakes. I mean, in Thor, Gore, the character was not, the villain was not really that imponent. And, you know, in the Multiverse of Madness, it was kind of like standard Marvel stuff. But in this one, you actually feel, you care a lot for this character. So that's something I really appreciated in the movie. As always, there's a lot of action and humor. I gotta say, like, you know, everybody complains about the Marvel humor, but I gotta say, like, this is more James Gunn type of humor, like we've seen in other kind of movies, and it works really well. The jokes are really well crafted. You know, the back and forth between the characters is hilarious. You know, I just love James Gunn's writing, and it really shows in the movie. Also, the style is always great. There's a really awesome sequence with the Backstreet Boys song "No Sleep Till Brooklyn," which is just amazing. You know, those kind of small moments that these movies are full of are just amazing, and that's something I really appreciate, especially from James Gunn. I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. And there's also like the emotional moments also serve as a counterbalance for these. So yeah, I love this movie so much. Also, another thing I want to mention is the relationship between Star-Lord and the new Gamora. So basically, as we remember from Avengers Endgame, so Gamora dies in Infinity War, and in Endgame, we kind of like receive a different alternate version of her who didn't never met the Guardians, so she doesn't know who Peter Quill is. And he is really like trying to get her to remember, even though she doesn't remember because she's from another timeline. And it leads to some really interesting moments, like really interesting stuff that I had a lot of you know, speculation of what was going to happen, or is she going to like fall in love with him again. And you know, well, in the end that doesn't happen, but I feel like it works really well because that's pretty much what would happen in a realistic scenario. So Star-Lord is left with without his Gamora, and that is something that I really enjoyed because it really shows that like not everybody gets a happy ending, not everybody gets what they want, and it was handled in such a realistic way that, you know, in the spirit of Marvel movies, like everything always happens the way you expect it in the classic, you know, cliche superhero stuff. You know, the guy gets the girl, you know, everybody falls in love, everybody saves the day. You know, if this actually happens, so that's something I really appreciated. So that's something I really enjoyed about the movie. It also has a very positive ending. So contrary to all the marketing, all the depressing and, you know, scary trailers that we saw, the movie actually has a very positive ending. Like every single one of the Guardians survive, and that is something that I liked. I honestly thought that this send off in a positive way was very good because, you know, I don't like it when people just are like, oh, we're gonna kill everybody, so, you know, it has a proper ending, or like make it super depressing, like make the ending like this, you know, really depressing thing to make people be like, oh, that is really the end of the Guardians. But it actually has a really, you know, positive and conclusion that makes sense. So basically, Star-Lord and Mantis kind of separate from the group, and the rest stay in nowhere, and they all follow like their own kind of like destiny. For example, Drax spends so much time like being this killing machine, this destroyer, and now, you know, there's a really awesome scene where, you know, Nebula tells him like, hey, you're destined to be a father, you know, because there's like this scene with some kids that were who Drax makes laugh, and, you know, that he's basically kind of like regaining his humanity that he lost, you know, due to his tragic backstory. And I feel like every one of the Guardians has kind of like a send off like that, where everybody just kind of like closes their arc. For example, Kraglin also learns how to use Yondu's, you know, like weird whistle arrow thing, and that is something that it was kind of like follows from the last movie. And yeah, there's a lot of moments that really make you happy for these characters, like happy that this movie has a really perfect conclusion. And yeah, so anyways, I think that's gonna pretty much the send off for these characters, except for Star-Lord. I feel like Star-Lord is gonna like return in the next movie, according to one of the like the post credit scene. So it'll be nice to see where he goes from there. But yeah, these are really amazing characters. I feel like these three movies have really given us one of the best arcs we've seen. Like, you know, the three movies plus Infinity War and Endgame are just a really great way to, you know, take these characters from like the less mainstream parts of the comic world into the mainstream. And yeah, it is just a very fun movie. It's also just really awesomely fun. I was just smiling the whole time. Some really well crafted action sequences. So yeah, there's really not much I have to complain about the movie. I just loved it so much. I feel like the runtime also was perfect. Like it was a little bit like around 2.5 hours. So yeah, it did a pretty good job. So I'm gonna give it a 95 out of 100. I just enjoyed it so much, and I really can't recommend the movie enough. Definitely one of the best of the year. And I gotta also appreciate like how many great stuff we've gotten so far in 2023. It's just been like good movie after good movie. I just can't complain. There's so much good stuff going on. So yeah, making it to the movies has really been worth it lately. But anyways, those are pretty much all my thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And yep, pretty much everything for today. So I'll see you next time.